A couple months ago, I was on a radio station in Boston. It was a big talk radio station, and I was on I think it was a big show because on the hour before me, there was one of the candidates for governor of Massachusetts. And then I came on, and the host was interviewing me, and I was expressing the ideas in the book that men need to show more leadership and be more decisive and make decisions. And he was like really aggressive and like, sort of, but it was okay. I figured, this is talk radio. He wants to be provocative. And then he says, okay, Elliot, well, I disagree with you. So this is what we're going to do. We're only going to ask women to call in, and we're going to see if they agree with you or if they agree with me, and we'll keep score. Are you ready? Ready to defend yourself? You're in Canada. You're far away. So I said, I'm ready. So the first woman calls in. She says, she's so frustrated with her husband. He doesn't make any decisions, doesn't show any leadership at home. And the host says, well, it sounds like you agree with Elliot. He says, yeah, I agree with him. So she says, well, okay, that's 1 for you, 0 for him. So the next woman calls in. She says, I don't know what you guys are talking about. My husband, he's strong, he shows leadership, and all the men in my family like that. So the host says, well, it sounds like you agree with Elliot. He says, yeah. So the host says, well, I guess it's 2 for you, 0 for me. And then another woman calls in, and she says, like, she's so frustrated, she's so fed up with her husband, he won't make any decisions. So then he says, well, it sounds like you agree with Elliot. So then he says, well, it's 3 for you, 0 for me. I guess at that point he stopped keeping score. And a couple of women called in, and basically they agree with my points. And then at the end he said he was really surprised. And surprise is a common reaction I get, especially from men, when I talk about the ideas that I found that Judaism teaches about being a man. And in the Haftorah with the portion Vayichi, which is the last portion in the book of Genesis, King David has come to near the end of his life, and he's giving words of advice to his son Solomon, who will become King Solomon. And his first words of advice are, be strong and become a man. So it's a very Jewish idea to be strong. It's not Jewish to be a nevish. So how did I come to write this book? I was married and I got divorced, and like a lot of people, I blamed the other person. Then I came to the point of thinking, well, what do I have to learn from this? I don't want to go through this again. So I set out on this journey to learn, what does it mean to be a man? And the first thing I learned was just listening to other men is that we're all confused. We hear all these ideas about be sensitive, develop your feminine side, and everyone's trying so hard to please, and nothing doesn't seem to be working. So then I started reading books. I read all these books on relationships, like a mountain of books. They really said nothing. I read some Jewish books on marriage. They said a few things, but they didn't really answer my questions. And it's only when I turned to the original sources that I was really blown away. I started in the beginning with the first man who was ever in a relationship, Adam. And it says Adam was alone. He wanted a wife. And he asked God for a wife. And God created Eve to be, in Hebrew, Ezer Kenegdo, which is translated to mean a helper opposing him or a helper against him. And I thought, a helper against him? What in the world does that mean? So I went to the commentary, right at the bottom of the page, regular art scroll Chumash, and the explanation comes from the Talmud, which said, if the man is worthy, the woman will be his helper. If he's not worthy, she will be against him. And when I read that, I was blown away. Here I had read like all these books that said virtually nothing. And this one sentence seemed to say everything, that it's the man's responsibility. If he works on himself to become worthy, the woman will be his partner. And if he doesn't, then she'll be against him. And so then Adam and Eve are in the Garden of Eden, right? He has his wife, they're in the Garden of Eden, they have one commandment. Don't eat the fruit of the tree of knowledge, right? So what happens? Eve eats it. And there's a medrash that says she tries to get Adam to eat it, and she tries to trick him. She tries to squeezes it into juice to try to trick him, and he refuses it. Then she starts arguing with him, and he still says no. And then she starts screaming at him until he couldn't take it anymore, and he gave in, and he ate the fruit. And then what happens? He's hiding in the bushes, right? And God says to him, Adam, did you eat the fruit of the tree of knowledge that I commanded you not to eat? Right? And what does Adam say? Does he take responsibility? Does he say, yes, I did it, I'm responsible? No. He does the complete opposite. He says, the woman you sent me gave it to me, and I ate it. I couldn't believe it. He gave in to something he knew was wrong, and then he blamed his wife. I thought, oh, that only happened today. And so what happens is God saying, I mean, I hear so many men, saying they're victims of women. So I said, so does God say, oh yes, poor Adam, you're a victim of your wife. You're not responsible for what happened. No, just the opposite, right? God punishes Adam not only for eating the fruit, but for listening to his wife and not using his own judgment. So there was another thing I learned in those books in the Jewish books on marriage. There was one statement that appeared in actually 3 of them, which is a quote from the Talmud, which says, if your wife is short, bend down and seek her advice. In other words, make an effort to listen to what your wife has to say. So that's interesting. What else does it say? I want to learn as much as I can. So I went to that page in the Talmud, Bava Metzia 59a, and that statement is actually a response to an earlier statement, which says, if you always follow your wife's advice, your life will be hell. And then it says, but don't they say if your wife is short, bend down and seek her advice? So there's a whole discussion that there are some things a woman should decide, some things a man should decide, but really it's very relevant today. It's like, I meet so many men today, they think if they just do whatever their wives tell them to do, yes dear, like the best advice, yes dear, and they can't understand, their wives should be having, they can't understand why it's just, it's not working. Their wives are frustrated with them. So it's really, if you never listen to your wife, what she says, make an effort to listen to her, but you're always just automatically doing what she says, it's not good. So what are the 3 things about being strong? Show leadership. What is leadership? It's not being controlling. Controlling is thinking only about yourself. Leadership is thinking about the greater good of your family. It's knowing what's going on. It's stepping forward and dealing with problems that are not being dealt with. And really being a hero. And what it's not, and men ask me what to do. They say, well, their wife's been running the show for 10 years. What should they do? I said, first thing you don't do is, if your wife makes a decision, don't say, well, I'm going to show you I'm the leader. We're not doing that. We're going to do the complete opposite. That's going to cause more conflict, more fighting. The next thing is make decisions. I listen, part of this is listening to what people say. And I've talked to so many single women who tell me that they go out with a man and he can't even decide where to go for a cup of coffee. He wants her to decide. And then once they finally get to a place, he won't even choose a table. He wants her to choose. So what I've been on a lot of radio shows with run by women where they talk about relationships. There's a lot of them or dating, and they'll say it. They want a man with a plan. You call up a woman, have a plan, know what you want to do. That's showing leadership. And the 3rd thing is take responsibility. Learn from the mistake that Adam made, and then men just keep doing over and over. You don't give in to something that's wrong and then blame your wife. You don't even if you let it go on and it's wrong, you're still responsible. Nobody wants to hear a man say he's a victim of a woman. It's as much as we have gender equality today, we still expect a man to be responsible for what goes on in his home. So in conclusion, I just say, when I wrote the book, I was writing it for myself and my friends, and I was kind of surprised by the reaction. It's being translated to 19 languages, and a lot of countries where I never, like Brazil, where the whole idea of machismo originated. It's published by a big publisher there, and in China, and in Russia, and in Japan, where you think every man has a geisha. It's published by a big publisher there. So, but it's really true. It's just like King David told to Solomon. It's like the teachings that fathers teach their sons: be strong, become a man. Thank you.